There's always been the nagging suspicion that WhatsApp, which promises encryption, is not safe from surveillance. And now those fears appear to be confirmed. At least a dozen, if not more, activists, lawyers and human rights and journalists, defenders across India say they were contacted by WhatsApp to inform them that they have been the target of a spyware attack. The Indian Express said this morning that the number is close to 20 individuals. As of this show going to air, we could confirm from 10 individuals who said that they had been contacted by WhatsApp and that they were a victim of a cyber attack. Now, if one sees the list of names, a clear pattern seems to emerge. Almost all of them would be in their work or affiliations critical of the ruling establishment. Many of them are defending or linked to the government's recent crackdown on the alleged urban collaboration of extreme left-wing groups. Let's look at that list now, and starts off with two of those who say that they've been hacked are lawyers for the accused in the Bhima Koregaon case. This is Nehal Singh Rathod, a Nagpur-based human rights lawyer, a defense lawyer in the Bhima Koregaon case, and Shalini Gera, who's a Chhattisgarh-based human rights lawyer. She's also a defense lawyer in the Bhima Koregaon case. Another one, Rupali Jadhav, based in Pune, is part of the Kabir Kala Manch, which is an anti-caste cultural group. They helped organize the event that led or was in the run-up to the Bhima Koregaon violence, called the Elgar Parishad. Anand Teltumbre, who's the academician based in Nagpur, writer, was arrested in the Bhima Koregaon case. He says he also got a message saying his phone was compromised. Saroj Giri, a professor at Delhi University and activist, has written on Naxal movements, also had the same complaint. Seema Azad, an Allahabad-based activist, was jailed for Maoist links, now out on bail. Several of those hacked also work with marginalized groups in Chhattisgarh, which as we know is a Naxal-affected state. Bela Bhatia, Chhattisgarh-based human rights activist. Digri Prasad Chauhan, also Chhattisgarh-based human rights activist and lawyer. And among the journalists is Shubhranshu Chaudhary, who's also a Chhattisgarh-based journalist, formerly of the BBC, runs a Chhattisgarh-based grassroots news service, and also Siddhant Sibal, a Delhi-based journalist with the channel WION. Now, almost all of them describe the same experience. They were first contacted towards the end of this month or earlier in this month by a researcher working for a Canada-based privacy watchdog called Citizens Lab that has been working with WhatsApp. Many of them got video messages like this one from the Citizens Lab researcher.
Hi, Prasad. So my name is John Scott Relton. I'm the senior researcher at the Citizen Lab at the Monk School at the University of Toronto. The Citizen Lab runs a research project into the digital targeting of human rights defenders and civil society groups. I know it's really strange to get a message like this, especially on your WhatsApp, from somebody who you don't know. So what I encourage you to do is Google my name and face, John Scott Relton, at Citizen Lab. You'll find that I look exactly the same on Google. And then I think we should talk right away about a digital security issue. Thanks.
So about a few weeks after that message, in the past 24 to 48 hours, almost all of those we contacted got a message like the one you're seeing on your screen from an authorized WhatsApp handle, which basically says that in May of this year, we as in WhatsApp stopped an attack where an advanced cyber actor exploited our video calling to install malware on user devices. There's a possibility this phone number was impacted, and we want to make sure you know how to keep your mobile phone secure. So the big question really, of course, is who is doing the targeting? The selection of those targeted has led to the suspicion that it is in some way linked to the Indian state. Now, NSO, the Israeli firm that designed the software allegedly used in the hack and currently being sued by Facebook, WhatsApp parent's company, has denied any wrongdoing. They claim they licensed their product only to vetted and legitimate government agencies and is never meant to be used against journalists and activists. But the government has denied its role in a series of statements. They've said that they're concerned about the privacy of the Indians being breached. They say they have no role in this. They deny any such allegations. And they also say WhatsApp doesn't have servers in India. The IT minister also issued a statement. He said he's asked WhatsApp to explain the breach. He says government agencies have an established protocol for interception, and he also threw in a political swipe saying, what about the snooping on Pranab Mukherjee and General V.K. Singh under the UPA regime? Okay, all right. Joining us tonight, we have on the show with us Shubhranshu Chaudhary, who's described himself as a peace activist, former journalist who we just referred to, one of those who says he was targeted. We have Karnika Seth, cyber law expert, Ankush Johar, who also works in cyber security, director, Infosec Ventures, Deshratan Nigam, political analyst, lawyer, supporter of the RSS. And joining us on the phone line is someone else who received the message saying that she too had been targeted, and this is Shalini Gera, human rights lawyer. So, Shalini, if I can just start by asking you, we broadly summarize the experience that most of you told us about how all of this unfolded. But just to understand that when you spoke to the gentleman from Citizens Lab, was he able to share a little bit more with you about how he understood all of this was working, and even possibly who could be behind it?
Yeah, John Scott Raisin contacted me on October 5th via a text message on WhatsApp. Again, he tried to establish his credentials, and I had to Google him to actually believe what he was saying. And then we had a phone call where he told me about the Pegasus software,
right,
and the fact that it's possible that my phone was also attacked. One of the questions was, of course, why me and who's going after me? And to that, he gave a rather roundabout answer saying that, when they track this, it goes through several servers. They can't really pinpoint how the servers are being used. But he said that this software costs millions of dollars and a very large infrastructure. So it's unlikely that my crackpot neighbor who harbors a grudge against me is doing this. It has to be a big agency with a lot of resources, something like the state.
Right.
So he clearly indicated to me that it has to be the government or a state agency that's deploying all this and all these many resources. And the only the only government I can think of is the Indian government, who might be interested in the work that I'm doing.
Right. Shalini, if at all that is the case, why would you believe that would be so?
Well, because this is not the first time we've been targeted by the Indian government. When we were working in Jabalpur, looking at people, tribals in jails, we were then, in 2016, we were targeted by the local police even then, and we were forced out of Jabalpur. And then more recently, I'm involved in doing some coordination work around Sudha Bharadwaj's case, who is one of the accused in the Bhima Koregaon case in Pune. And so that's another reason I think that the state might be interested in following it around. As you understand, the entire Bhima Koregaon case is based on digital evidence that is picked out of some computers. And this whole thing leads to the expectation that maybe if the state has access to this very sophisticated software that can actually monitor and take control of electronic devices, then we can also plant all kinds of stuff on your electronic devices. And that really puts a big question as to the authenticity of the so-called evidence they're producing in the Bhima Koregaon case.
Okay. Well, we'll of course have to see whether all of that in terms of the technology is that possible or not. But you're saying that because you have been working in the field of human rights, there have been run-ins with the state, and you're currently also lawyer for Sudha Bharadwaj, who was arrested in this case. Perhaps those could be reasons why you were targeted. Let me also just turn to you, Shubhranshu, because in that sense, you have not perhaps been so actively finding yourself in a position where you're taking on the state. You've been a journalist and you run CGNet, which is a kind of grassroots information network in Chhattisgarh. But did the pattern also be the same, that you were contacted about a month or so ago?
Exactly.
You were saying
exactly on the same date.
By the Citizens Lab researcher, on the same date.
And the same message I got, and I was suspicious, so I didn't respond. Then I got in touch with some of my digital security friends. They cross-checked and came back. And John, he said, you will receive a message from WhatsApp later, but can you can we work together? I said, for what? So there was a breach, and WhatsApp, which we understand is a secure communication platform. So can we work together to fill
understand
that,
exactly
what
happened.
has happened?
So one of the things that, as we understand it, is that how this has worked is that Pegasus, the software that has been designed by this Israeli firm, actually works by way of sending a number of missed calls to the number of the phone that is needed to be hacked, and then uses that to actually do the hack. So did you receive such missed calls?
I didn't notice them before, but when John told me, I went back and there were missed calls.
From what was it? Some kind of an international number? Or?
International, all international numbers.
Okay.
And it was quite a few months before that.
Would you know approximately when?
I think May.
Around May.
Around May.
I see. Shalini, if you're still on the line with us, do you also recall getting such missed calls?
I was in Delhi at that time because my father was unwell, and I was getting a persistent call from an international number, this persistent video call. And when I checked the country code, it was Sweden. And I remember quipping to my colleague that, well, I'm not expecting a Nobel Prize yet, so I wonder why somebody in Sweden is so eager to get in touch with me. But of course, because that number wasn't recognized, I kept disconnecting it. And when I talked to John, he seemed to think that that was the call by which they were trying to infect my phone.
Right. Okay, so that pattern at least seems to be the same. But Shubhranshu, would you have any theories that if at all this is true, that there is some attempt to try to breach your phone, why would that be? Are you doing anything which is, what's your work currently?
It's an old story. Say, when I was covering Kashmir, we didn't have WhatsApp at that time, and I cannot prove it, but our phones were tapped. So now we have WhatsApp, and though I am a peace activist now, we do a peace journalism platform.
Okay.
So we have nothing to hide, but so there will be.
But you're working in Chhattisgarh.
Yes,
right?
and there will be attempts. So it is not surprising. So after that, I started working with John that we need to use electronic devices. So how should we be safe?
Right.
Like in phone world, I'll go to a PCO and make that call, which I don't want others to know.
Sure.
So we've been working together how to secure our emails, how to secure our phones. This is the new world, and you will have to learn new things.
I really wonder how we can be secure other than deleting all these apps. But let me just bring in Ankush and Karnika Seth. Now, Karnika, what do you make of now, the fact that this is something that has been suspected in the pipeline? Now this has finally emerged based on the kind of pattern we're seeing of the sort of people who've been surveilled and the information we have about how exactly it worked. What do you read into it?
Well, although the investigations are ongoing and it might be slightly premature to even make conclusions, but nevertheless, no technology is foolproof, and if this has been the case, it's a clear case of hacking. It could also involve impersonation. We don't know who the speaker was and what motivation he really had. Was it for the government, or was it on behalf of any other organized racket or some group? But the digital evidence will really prove what is conclusively, the group that is really, responsible for all of this.
Right. Okay.
And we see this use of malware and keyloggers day in and day out. But yes, if it is government, or if it is any particular group, they would be charged of hacking. There could be also criminal and civil penalties attached with it. And with the new PDP bill coming into consideration, even government is accountable, and if it's a right to privacy, it ought to be protected, no matter who is breaching this.
Right. Ankush, because now the Israeli firm that sells the software says that they only sell to governments and government agencies. They don't sell it to anybody else, and hence the suspicion that was the state behind this. But what do you make of it? Because as the gentleman, the Citizens Lab researcher, has been telling those who are targeted, like Shalini, that it really requires somebody with an enormous amount of capacity, funds and resources to be actually able to afford or pull off something like this.
Srinivasan, what she's saying is absolutely right. So I'm going to stick to a very specific technical point here,
Right.
which is that from a technology standpoint, this is a situation where after the missed call, a certain packet is actually injected into your phone, which gives you, the technical word for this is remote code execution, but in layman language it means I can take control of your entire device. So it has, so WhatsApp was only a conduit, but it gave the attacker access to your entire device. It's like being in your operating system. I can install anything I want, silently as well, and I can extract any amount of data from any other application. Typically what we've seen, so this is, again, it's called a zero-day attack, which is essentially somebody found a vulnerability. Pegasus is being called out because that's who the lawsuit is against. I would like to also put, technically it is possible that Pegasus was only one off, because if the 0 day was known, if the attack strategy was known to multiple other agencies,
Right.
be it state or otherwise,
Yeah.
there's a big market for these 0 days primarily. They sell for $1.5 million kind of numbers, $1.5 million plus
Right.
for a vulnerability of this nature
Right.
per operating system. So somebody would have invested, between $3 to $5 million to get access to something like this in the first place.
Okay. So that's a lot of money. Now, the
If that
important
makes
thing to
sense
remember,
from a pure technology standpoint.
right? The important
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
to
absolutely.
underline here, Ankush, is that WhatsApp actually has been pushing back against Pegasus even prior to this, right? Because Pegasus says that they provide this software to governments because that allows governments to target wrongdoers, like people involved in terrorism, drug trafficking, trafficking of children, and so on. But the concern has been that this can also be misused by authorities.
So, good point, Srinivasan. I'd like to actually expand that. From a technology standpoint, I'll expand that thought process a little bit, which is that Pegasus, like I said, could have been just one of the companies using this.
Right.
Because WhatsApp and the owner of WhatsApp, Facebook, has identified Pegasus as one user.
Right.
If the vulnerability exists, it may have been in multiple other hands.
Okay.
So Pegasus is just the first of the lot.
Right.
That was identified and may have been called out by Facebook in the lawsuit.
Right.
There may be other agencies, and necessarily may not be state. If I think the interesting thing what I would recommend is, since one of the NDTV guys was involved as well, it's also possible that they were trying to snoop in on somebody else's conversation,
Right.
where there may be a common thread, somebody who was speaking to these people
Right.
who have
Just
been
to-
targeted.
Right. Just to
Because
clarify.
they could not reach the other person for whatever reason,
Right.
they may actually have been using.
Okay, just to clarify, no one from NDTV was targeted. There was a journalist from Vion who was targeted,
Oh,
which is another
sorry,
TV
I
network.
thought,
But that apart, they
Vion,
shut the...
okay, my
right.
apologies.
They shut
My
the Nigam.
apologies.
What do you make of this? Because, instinctively, when one heard this news, the reaction was of concern across the political spectrum or across ideological divide and so on and so forth, which is the correct response, because hacking of this nature affects all of us. We're all on WhatsApp. But when the list of names of those emerged of who'd actually been targeted, it did seem to suggest that there was some kind of pattern there. These are all people who are well-known critics of the government, dissenters and what have you. But would you be able to put that aside and say that this is concerning, that if now this kind of technology is available either to the government directly or to others who are working on behalf of the state, that's not a good thing?
Let us be very clear. Governments work on certain principles and they do spying. But that is, well, as the information technology minister clearly pointed out, there is a set procedure and protocol.
Sure.
So this is something beyond that. It appears that is the government stand. And there appears to be some complicity of the WhatsApp. Appears to be. Now, if you, as a lawyer, let me tell you, and there I agree.
How would you say that? Because
See,
WhatsApp is actually suing the company that produced Pegasus. Yeah.
Let me tell you, that is where the point I am bringing it out.
Okay.
I agree with the lawyer on the panel, the expert that the investigation, we cannot draw conclusions at this stage.
Of course.
But look at the amount of damages they are seeking, $75,000. That's peanuts for damages for a scale of this, where a simple breach in US results into millions of dollars of damages.
Well, how would you say, what do you think WhatsApp's complicity is in this?
Is negligence on their part,
Sure.
some breach at their end, services at their point at that place. So they are trying to probably file this suit as a preemptive measure to prevent a liability coming on them. So
that's truly spoken like a lawyer.
75,000 damages is something which is peanuts in US.
Okay, yeah, Kanika, I'll come to you in a second. I'll come to that complicity of WhatsApp in a second, but it's quite possible. It's quite possible that WhatsApp's hands may not be clean. But I'm trying to ask you a different point, which is, as we know, the government has been trying for the longest time
to
actually get WhatsApp to share encrypted information, get access to servers. WhatsApp has been resisting.
No, traceability they want,
traceability,
not the decryption.
So in the absence of that, it is possible that the government has then taken, or agencies of the government may have chosen to use other means, off-the-book means, to try and snoop on its dissenters.
No, I don't think so. That is a possible in a democracy where you have well laid down system where you can approach a court and government has to release that data who the government is doing and who is not doing, because
you think this works so beautifully in a country? You
yes,
think there's
yes,
that kind of oversight or surveillance in this country?
No, I think the government is very clear and we have well laid down and so far, this may be just the tip, there may be other people also. There could be other people. This is running into 21 countries.
No, of course it is.
So
there are over 2,000 people in 21 countries. We're just talking about India.
So, and therefore,
but I'm really, I must say, I'm very touched by your faith in the the trust that you have in the government in its ability to surveil by following the law, because all the evidence we have suggests exactly the opposite. And this is not just true of this government. All governments have abused the right to surveillance. But I'll just come back to you in a second. Yes, you wanted to come in. Karnika, yes.
When we say that there was a transaction, if there was the technology was actually bought, or this malware was actually used by the government, that's an assumption or an allegation at this point, which is under investigation.
Yes.
So is there a trace? Is there a conclusive trace of the same? Merely because the company says that this was, only sold to government entities. We do not know whether it was actually a government entity which bought it or not.
Of course.
That's also something which we have to find out as a fact.
Yes.
But it doesn't have to be a narrow objective. I think the modus operandi itself suggests that there is a larger plan of whatever dimension involving multiple jurisdictions.
Yes.
It's not only located, to India alone, but yes, targeted on a larger scale for a larger objective, which we yet need to introspect.
Right. Last quick word from you, Shubhranshu. What is the...
Hasan, I want to add a very quick point.
Yes, go ahead, Ankush.
I want to...
Yes, Ankush. Very short of time, but go ahead.
So the point I want to make is that Pegasus may be only one of the companies or entities or organizations that has this or had this.
Yes.
It was patched subsequently. Do you remember WannaCry?
I have to confess,
that
I don't.
Big episode of ransomware that had hit multiple countries, including in India?
Right. Okay, so you're saying there could be many.
That was a similar situation where there was a...
Yes, you're saying there are many entities and there are many organizations that may possess the same kind of software and technology that allows this. I'm completely out of time, but just literally in 10 seconds, Shubhranshu.
Correct.
Do you have faith that if at all the state was involved in this, who's going to tell us that? It's only the state that has to investigate itself.
We will have to remember that we live in a different time. It's postcard. It's WhatsApp or Signal. So find your own ways of talking those things which you do not want to share with others.
Okay.
It's a dangerous time, and these are dangerous things. It is definitely an attack on our fundamental right.
Okay.
But we don't know
let's see.
if it
Let's
is
wait
really
to see
happening.
if we ever get the bottom of it, but I won't be holding my breath. Thank you all so much for joining us on Reality Check, for being part of the show and for watching. That's all the time we have. Good night.